The sun had barely risen when she opened her eyes in the cold, dark garage. The floor was hard, and the smell of damp wood and old oil filled her nose. She hugged her thin blanket closer to her, trying to warm herself, though she knew it was useless. Outside, the world was waking up. Birds were chirping, and the morning light peeked through the cracks of the garage door. But inside, it felt as if she was trapped in a shadow. For years, this garage had been her world. She had learned to live in its small space, making the best of what little she had. There was a worn-out mattress in the corner, a few broken chairs stacked against the wall, and an old lamp that flickered every time the electricity went out. She had made friends with the dust and the spiders, with the cold nights and the constant loneliness. Still, no matter how much she tried to get used to it, a part of her longed for warmth, for kindness. For a life outside these walls, her stepmother had no mercy. She would pass by the garage door without a word, sometimes sneering, sometimes yelling at her for the smallest mistakes. The father rarely interfered. He had grown cold, indifferent to her suffering. To them, she was nothing more than a burden, someone to be hidden away so the family could maintain appearances. She remembered the early days when she had hoped for love from her father. But those hopes had been crushed one by one, leaving her with only the echo of what could have been. The mornings were the hardest. She had to get up before anyone else, sweep the floor to remove the frost that settled overnight, and gather what little food she could find in the kitchen without being noticed. Sometimes she would find scraps, sometimes nothing at all. Breakfast was never a meal. It was survival. She had learned to eat slowly, savoring each bite as if it might be her last. She had grown thin, fragile, but her spirit, though battered, refused to break. School was no escape. She would walk quietly through the corridors, head down, avoiding the whispers and glances of other students. They knew she was different, knew she lived a hidden life. Some pitied her, some ignored her, and some whispered cruelly behind her back. But she had learned to protect herself with silence, with a mask that hid her pain. Inside, however, she ached. She longed to raise her hand, to speak, to laugh like everyone else. But fear held her back. Fear of being punished, fear of being sent back to the garage with even harsher treatment. At school, she found solace in books. They became her friends, her companions. In stories, she traveled to places she could only dream of. Met characters who loved her, respected her, and believed in her. Each page was a small escape, a reminder that there was a world beyond the garage. A world where kindness existed, where families could be loving and protective. These stories filled her mind with hope, a fragile flame that refused to die despite the darkness around her. She had one small comfort in the garage, a tiny window that looked out onto the backyard. Through it, she could see the sky, the trees, the distant hills. On good days, the sunlight would stream through, and for a moment she felt almost free. She would sit by that window for hours, imagining what life could be like outside. She would trace shapes in the clouds, dream of running through fields, of feeling the wind on her face, and of being hugged by someone who truly cared. Nights were even worse than mornings. The cold would seep into her bones, and she would shiver under the thin blanket. Shadows danced on the walls from the flickering lamp, creating shapes that sometimes scared her, but sometimes made her feel less alone. She would talk to the shadows, telling them stories, sharing her fears, and imagining that someone, somewhere, was listening. Sleep was a luxury, often interrupted by nightmares of being trapped forever, as being forgotten by the world. She remembered her birthday last year, the first one she had spent entirely alone in the garage. Her stepmother had walked past without a word, and her father had been too busy to notice. She had cried quietly, wishing for a sign that someone loved her. She had found an old notebook in the corner and written her wishes down, folding the paper carefully and tucking it under her pillow. It was a small ritual, a way to hold on to hope when hope seemed impossible. Despite everything, she had learned resilience. She had learned to face each day with courage. Even when the weight of neglect and cruelty pressed heavily on her small shoulders, she had learned to find small joys wherever she could, in a bird that sang outside the window, in the smell of rain, in the rare smile of a kind teacher. These moments reminded her that life could still be beautiful. Even when surrounded by darkness, her stepmother's cruelty was relentless, yet she never let it define her entirely. There were days when she would snap, screaming at her for something she didn't do, punishing her with chores or threats. But she had developed a quiet strength, a way of enduring that kept her alive. She learned to anticipate the anger, to navigate the house silently, to avoid drawing attention. It was a lonely, exhausting existence, but she survived, day after day. One afternoon, she found a stray kitten hiding in the corner of the garage. Its fur was matted, its eyes wide with fear. She took it in gently, feeding it scraps and speaking softly to it. For the first time in years, she had a companion, someone who depended on her and offered unconditional love in return. The kitten became her secret friend, a small piece of comfort in a harsh world. She would whisper to it at night, telling it her dreams and fears, feeling a little less alone. Even though the garage was her prison, it was also her sanctuary in some ways. She had learned to create small routines, small pockets of normalcy in the chaos. She cleaned, organized, and maintained what little she had. She wrote in her notebook, drawing pictures, jotting down thoughts, and imagining a future where she was free. These routines gave her a sense of control, a sense that, despite the cruelty around her, she could still shape her own life in small ways. One day, as she was sitting by the tiny window, she noticed a car she didn't recognize pulling into the driveway. It was unusual for anyone to visit, and her heart raced with curiosity and fear. She pressed her face against the glass, trying to see who it was. She didn't know it yet, but this visit would change everything. For the first time, she felt a flicker of hope that her life could be different, that someone might finally see her, hear her, and rescue her from the world she had known for so long. And so, she continued to live her days in the garage, clinging to her dreams and small comforts. Unaware that the life she had imagined was slowly moving closer, she faced each day with quiet determination, holding on to the fragile hope that one day she would be more than a shadow in a forgotten corner of the house. Each night, as she drifted to sleep under her thin blanket, she imagined the warmth of a hug, the sound of kind words, and a life filled with love, waiting for the moment it would finally arrive, even though the garage was her world. She sometimes dreamed of people who cared. She thought about her grandfather, a man she had never met, but whose existence her parents never denied. They spoke of him in hushed tones, as if mentioning his name too loudly would summon danger. She didn't know why he had not come for her, or why he didn't even know how badly she was suffering. The thought that somewhere out there someone loved her, but didn't know she needed help, filled her with both hope and sadness. School became a place where her imagination ran free. She would sit at the back of the classroom, pretending that her pencil was a magic wand that could transport her anywhere. During lessons, she drew little pictures in her notebook, dreaming of the day someone would see her and understand what she had gone through. Sometimes, a teacher would notice her drawings and smile at them. Those small smiles became precious, like tiny sparks of light in a long tunnel of darkness. She clung to them, storing them in her memory for days when the world felt completely against her. Outside, the seasons changed, and with them, the challenges grew. Winters were harsh. The garage became a freezing cell where she shivered under a thin blanket. And summers were oppressive, the heat trapped inside, making every movement uncomfortable. Yet, she adapted. She learned to find little joys in these times, the warmth of the sun through a crack in the door, the sound of rain hitting the metal roof, the smell of flowers from the neighbor's garden drifting through the window. These small moments reminded her that the world beyond the garage still existed, and it was beautiful. Her stepmother's cruelty was consistent and harsh. If she left a dish unwashed or a blanket unfolded, punishment followed. Sometimes it was yelling, sometimes it was being locked in the garage for hours longer than usual. Her father rarely intervened, often looking away or pretending not to notice. But even in these moments, she discovered resilience within herself. She realized that her spirit could not be completely crushed, even when the world tried its hardest to break her. In the midst of this, she found a small escape in writing letters. Though she never sent them, she wrote to her grandfather, telling him about her life, her dreams, and her struggles. She described the garage, the cold, the loneliness, and the small things that gave her comfort. She wrote as if he would one day read these words and understand the pain she had endured. Each letter was a release, a way to pour out feelings she had no one to share them with. The pages became a secret diary, a companion, and a hope that one day someone would finally notice her. One afternoon, she discovered an old photograph tucked away in a drawer in the garage. It was a picture of her as a small child, smiling and happy, her grandfather beside her. The image brought back memories she barely remembered: warmth, laughter, and the love of a family she had been separated from. She stared at the photograph, holding it close, imagining her grandfather's voice, his laughter, and the safety she had longed for. In that moment, her hope felt tangible, as if she could almost reach him. School continued to be both a challenge and a refuge. She had a few friends who noticed her loneliness and tried to reach out. But she had learned to keep her distance, fearing that attachments might end in pain. She spoke softly, smiled politely, and carried herself in a way that made others believe she was fine. Yet inside, she was fragile, always aware that her life was different, that her dreams were far from reality. Despite that, she studied hard, clinging to the belief that education might be her ticket to a better future, a life where she could finally escape the garage. Her nights were filled with long hours of reflection. She would lie awake listening to the sounds of the house, imagining the lives of the people inside. She wondered if anyone thought about her, if anyone noticed her absence from their daily lives. She would picture her grandfather, imagining him reading her letters, discovering her plight, and deciding to come for her. These thoughts became her solace, a quiet source of strength that carried her through even the harshest days. The small window in the garage continued to be her portal to the world outside. She would watch children play, neighbors go about their daily routines, and sometimes travelers passing by. Each glimpse reminded her that life was happening elsewhere. She was missing out on the experiences everyone else seemed to take for granted. Yet she also found inspiration in these moments. She began to plan, to dream of ways she could reach out, to survive, and perhaps to find a way into the life she deserved. One day she noticed a stray dog wandering in the yard, thin and hungry. She managed to coax it into the garage, offering it scraps of food she had saved. Slowly, over weeks, the dog became her companion, providing a presence that filled the emptiness of her days. She named it quietly, a secret that made her feel like she had control over something, someone she could care for, and who cared for her in return. The dog became a symbol of hope, a reminder that kindness could still exist even in the harshest circumstances. Her stepmother's punishments continued, but with each act of cruelty, her determination grew. She realized that surviving wasn't enough. She had to be ready for the day someone might finally notice her. She practiced patience, learning when to speak, when to act, and when to stay hidden. Every day was a test of endurance, and she became stronger without realizing it, building resilience through hardship. Letters continued to be her outlet. She would write about her school life, the friends she had, the small victories, and the constant struggle to remain unseen and unheard. She wrote as if speaking to her grandfather directly, hoping that one day these words would reach him. She poured her heart into these letters, finding comfort in knowing that her thoughts were recorded. Their pain and hopes were documented somewhere outside of herself. Her dreams grew larger. Imagined meeting her grandfather, feeling his arms around her, hearing words of comfort, and discovering a life of love and safety. She imagined a world where she was no longer invisible, where she could laugh freely, go to school without fear, and enjoy the simple pleasures she had been denied. These dreams kept her alive, a secret garden in her mind where she could be free, even if just for a little while each day. One evening, a neighbor who had occasionally seen her through the small window approached her quietly. They didn't say much, only a few words of kindness, a gentle offer of food or warmth. It was a reminder that not everyone was cruel, that there were people in the world who could be trusted. These small acts gave her courage, reinforcing the belief that someone would eventually come for her. Her life could change in ways she'd only imagined in her letters and dreams. Through all of this, she learned the value of hope. Despite years of neglect and cruelty, despite living in a garage with little to her name. She refused to give up on the possibility of love, safety, and happiness. Each day was a battle, but also a step toward a future she had begun to imagine with clarity. She held on to her dreams tightly, nurturing them like fragile seeds in the harsh soil of her life. As the months passed, she noticed small signs that change might be coming. A car she didn't recognize would occasionally drive by the house. A letter might have gone missing from the mailbox. She wasn't sure. Each occurrence was a mystery, but also a spark of hope. She began to believe that the world beyond the garage was paying attention, that someone, perhaps her grandfather, was aware of her suffering and planning to intervene. With each passing day, her hope grew stronger. She cared for the dog and the kitten, wrote letters filled with dreams and stories, and continued her studies diligently. She remained cautious, aware that her stepmother's cruelty could strike at any moment, yet she refused to let fear dominate her life entirely. Her resilience became her shield, her imagination her escape, and her hope the compass guiding her through the darkest times. And so, she continued to live her life in the garage, holding on to dreams, nurturing small joys, and preparing herself for the day when her life could finally change. Though the world outside remained mostly unaware of her struggle, she knew in her heart that one day someone would see her, care for her, and bring her out of the shadows. Until then, she survived, hoped, and dreamed, a quiet, determined spirit, ready for the moment that would transform her life forever. The days continued to pass in the garage, each one blending into the next, yet a sense of change began to stir in her life. One afternoon, as she was arranging the few belongings she had, she heard voices outside. They were unfamiliar, calm, but firm, and they carried an authority she hadn't felt in the house before. She pressed her ear against the door, heart pounding, trying to make out the words. She recognized one voice in particular. It was deep and commanding, yet gentle. Her pulse quickened, and for a moment, she dared to hope. The next few days were filled with small signs that something was shifting. There were more visitors to the house, people she didn't know, asking questions that made her stepmother uncomfortable. Her father avoided looking at her, acting tense and nervous. She didn't understand everything, but she could feel the tension in the air. For the first time in years, she sensed that the world outside her garage was beginning to notice her, that the life she had imagined might not be just a dream. School became both a challenge and a lifeline. She continued to immerse herself in her studies, finding refuge in books and in the quiet moments when she could write letters to the grandfather she had never met. She wrote about everything: the cold mornings, the small joys, the friends she had made, and her growing hope that someone would soon notice her. These letters were no longer just a secret. They were a way of keeping her mind sharp, her dreams alive, and her heart ready for change. One afternoon, while sitting by her window, she saw a man standing near the driveway. He wasn't someone she recognized from the neighborhood. He had a calm presence, a dignity that made her heart race. She watched as he spoke quietly to her stepmother, who seemed unusually tense. The man's voice carried across the yard, gentle yet commanding, and she felt a strange sense of comfort hearing it. It was the voice of someone who could make a difference, and she longed to meet him. Days passed, and the man returned several times, each visit bringing more questions and tension into the house. Her stepmother grew increasingly nervous, often pacing, muttering under her breath, and avoiding her usual cruel remarks. She noticed her father growing anxious, a subtle shift in his behavior that made her feel a tiny flicker of hope. Perhaps, just perhaps, someone was finally taking notice of the life she had endured in silence. Her friends at school began to notice a change in her as well. She seemed more alert, more focused, though her eyes still carried the weight of years spent in the garage. They whispered to her, asking if something had happened, but she only smiled quietly, keeping her thoughts to herself. She wanted to believe, but she had learned to guard her heart, fearing disappointment. Still, a small seed of hope had been planted, growing with each passing day. At night, she lay awake, thinking about the man she had seen. She imagined conversations she might have with him, the questions she could ask, the safety she might finally feel. Her dreams became more vivid, filled with images of freedom, warmth, and love. She imagined a life where she could laugh without fear, eat without worry, and sleep without trembling in the cold. These dreams became her sanctuary, a place where she could escape the harsh reality of the garage, even if only for a few hours each night. Her small companions, the dog and the kitten, seemed to sense the change as well. They were calmer, more content, as if they too felt the approaching shift in their lives. She took care of them meticulously, feeding them, grooming them, and talking to them about the dreams she held. They became her audience, her confidants, and her source of comfort, reminding her that even in the darkest times, there were small sparks of joy to be found. The man's visits continued, each time bringing more questions and scrutiny into the household. One evening, she overheard a conversation that made her heart leap. He spoke of a young girl, her situation, and the need to ensure her safety. Her mind raced, realizing that he might be talking about her. The thought filled her with a mixture of fear and excitement. Could it really be true? Could this be the moment she had been dreaming of for so long? As the days turned into weeks, the atmosphere in the house changed dramatically. Her stepmother's cruelty became less overt, replaced by a nervousness that she could almost taste in the air. Her father seemed unsure of what to do, caught between fear and the knowledge that he could no longer control the situation. She began to feel a sense of cautious optimism, hope that the life she had imagined might finally become real. One afternoon, the man came directly to the garage. He knocked softly, and when she opened the door, he smiled gently, introducing himself and speaking in a kind, reassuring tone. He asked her questions, not harshly, but with genuine interest in her well-being. She found herself speaking freely, telling him about her life, her dreams, and the years spent in the garage. For the first time, she felt truly heard, and the tears that had been held back for so long finally began to flow. The following days were filled with preparations for change. Arrangements were made to ensure her safety, and the household atmosphere became increasingly tense for her stepmother. She could sense that the world was finally aligning in her favor, that the people who had ignored her for so long were now taking action. The reality of her impending freedom filled her with a mixture of joy and nervous anticipation. She continued her routines in the garage, but each task felt different now. Sweeping the floor, arranging her few belongings, and caring for her pets took on new meaning. They were no longer just chores to survive another day. They were acts of preparation for a life she had longed for. She imagined her days beyond the garage, the sunlight on her face, the freedom to laugh and play, and the warmth of human connection that had been absent for so long. School became a place of renewed purpose. She studied harder, knowing that her future was changing and that her education could open doors she had only dreamed of. She found small joys in her friends' kindness, in the smiles of teachers, and in the moments of quiet reflection that allowed her to imagine the life ahead. Her hope grew stronger each day, no longer fragile, but a tangible force guiding her forward. Her nights remained a mix of dreams and anticipation. She would lie awake, imagining the conversations she would have with her grandfather, the questions she would ask, and the life they could build together. She pictured herself exploring the world outside the garage, feeling the wind on her face, and experiencing the simple pleasures that had been denied to her for so long. Each night, her dreams grew more vivid, painting a picture of freedom and love that felt within reach. The small window in the garage continued to be her connection to the outside world. She watched as life went on around her, seeing neighbors, children, and travelers moving through their days. Each glimpse reminded her of what awaited her, and she clung to these moments as proof that the world outside was real, that it was waiting for her to step into it. The anticipation of freedom became a constant companion. Filling her with courage and determination, her letters continued, though now they were filled not just with dreams, but with hope that someone would act. She wrote about the man who had visited, about the changes she noticed in the household, and about her growing belief that her life was about to change. Writing became a way to process her emotions, to prepare herself mentally and emotionally for the transformation that was coming. Each word was a step toward the life she had always imagined. Through all of this, she maintained her resilience. She continued to endure the small cruelties of her stepmother. Finding strength in the knowledge that her circumstances were temporary, she cared for her pets, pursued her studies, and nurtured her dreams, all while holding on to the hope that her life was about to change forever. Her spirit, though tested, remained unbroken, a quiet force that carried her through each day. Then, one day, the moment arrived. The man returned with a determined presence, accompanied by others who were there to ensure her safety. He spoke to her directly, explaining that she was no longer alone, that she would be taken care of, and that the years of hardship were finally coming to an end. She felt a wave of relief and disbelief, tears streaming down her face as she realized that the life she had dreamed of was now within reach. She packed her few belongings with care, taking one last look at the garage that had been both her prison and her refuge. Each item held memories, lessons, and moments of resilience. She hugged her pets tightly, promising them a better life filled with warmth and love. As she stepped out of the garage, she felt a mix of fear and excitement, knowing that the world outside was waiting for her, and that her journey of survival and hope had finally led to freedom. The moment she stepped out of the garage, the world felt different, almost overwhelming. The sun shone brighter, the air was warmer, and even the simple sound of birds felt like music. For years she had been trapped in darkness, living in fear, hunger, and isolation. Now, standing outside, everything seemed new, as if she was seeing the world for the first time. Her heart raced, and tears streamed down her face, not from sadness, but from relief, hope, and disbelief. She had imagined this moment countless times, and yet, experiencing it was more incredible than any dream. The man who had come to rescue her, the one whose calm and kind voice she had recognized, now introduced her to others who would help her. There were people ready to ensure her safety, provide her with comfort, and guide her through the life she had been denied for so long. They spoke gently, explaining that she would have a warm bed, good food, clothes, and most importantly, love. She listened intently, her mind struggling to grasp the reality that someone cared so deeply about her, that her suffering was finally being acknowledged. The ride to her grandfather's home was filled with nervous anticipation. Every turn of the car, every passing street, felt like a step further away from the life she had known and closer to the life she had always dreamed of. She clutched her few belongings tightly, her pets beside her sensing the change as well. The dog wagged its tail, and the kitten purred softly, as if understanding that their world was about to become safe and full of warmth. She glanced out the window at the passing scenery, marveling at the freedom and space that had been denied to her for so long when they arrived. The house was unlike anything she had ever seen. It was grand but welcoming, not intimidating, filled with warmth and light. She could hear voices and laughter, a stark contrast to the silence and tension of her former home. She stepped cautiously, unsure how to react to the sudden kindness that surrounded her. For years she had been conditioned to fear adults, to expect cruelty or neglect, so this new reality felt almost unreal. Yet as she looked around, she realized that she was finally safe, finally cared for, and finally free. Her grandfather entered the room, a tall, dignified man with a gentle presence. He knelt down to her level, his eyes filled with concern and love. For the first time, she felt completely seen, as if all the years of pain and suffering had been recognized. She didn't speak immediately, overwhelmed by emotion, but he understood. He spoke softly, telling her that she was safe, that she was loved, and that she would never have to endure what she had in the garage ever again. Tears flowed freely as she absorbed his words, her heart swelling with a mixture of relief and joy. The days that followed were filled with small adjustments and discoveries. She learned the routines of the household, the warmth of a comfortable bed, the taste of abundant food, and the feeling of being truly cared for. Her pets adjusted quickly, finding new spaces to explore and resting comfortably without fear. She discovered that love could be consistent, that safety could be permanent, and that her life could be filled with opportunities rather than confinement. Each day brought new experiences, new lessons, and new joys that she had never imagined. Education became a central focus. She was enrolled in a supportive school where teachers noticed her intelligence, creativity, and potential. She excelled quickly, fueled not only by natural curiosity, but also by a desire to make up for the years she had lost. Her grandfather encouraged her, providing resources, tutors, and time to explore her interests. For the first time, she could dream without limits, envisioning a future where she could pursue her passions and build a life full of possibility. The contrast between the cramped garage and this new world was stark, yet it reinforced her determination to embrace every opportunity beyond education. She began to explore hobbies she had never had the chance to try. Painting, music, writing, everything became a way to express the emotions she had kept bottled up for years. Her creativity flourished, and she found comfort and joy in each new skill she developed. The house was filled with laughter, not just hers, but from her grandfather and the staff who cared for her. These sounds, so foreign and beautiful, became the soundtrack of her new life, replacing the silence and fear of the garage. She began to develop relationships with others in the household. Staff members, tutors, and family friends treated her with kindness and respect, helping her rebuild trust in people. She learned that not everyone was cruel, that some adults could be gentle, caring, and dependable. Slowly, she allowed herself to open her heart, to express her thoughts and emotions freely. For the first time, she experienced companionship, mentorship, and friendship in ways that were previously unimaginable. Her grandfather took time to understand her fully. He asked questions about her life in the garage, listened to her experiences without judgment, and offered reassurance and guidance. She spoke freely about the hardships, the neglect, and the moments of hope that had kept her going. He validated her feelings, emphasizing that none of what had happened was her fault. His words became a foundation for healing, helping her to process the trauma of her past and embrace the promise of her future. The pets became a central part of her life as well. The dog and kitten adapted to their new surroundings, providing companionship and comfort. She learned to care for them in ways she hadn't been able to before, taking walks, playing, and nurturing them with patience and love. Their presence reminded her of the small joys that could be found even in difficult times, and they became a symbol of the happiness and stability that were now part of her everyday life. She explored the house and its gardens, marveling at the beauty around her. The outdoor spaces were vast, filled with flowers, trees, and places to play. For years, she had imagined such freedom, and now she could run without fear, feel the sun on her skin, and enjoy the simple pleasures of nature. Each step she took outside reinforced the reality of her new life filled with choice, freedom, safety. Her grandfather also helped her reconnect with the idea of family in a positive sense. They talked about relatives, friends, and the history of the family in ways that encouraged her to see herself as part of a larger story. She learned about her heritage, her potential, and the responsibilities that came with it. Unlike before, this was not about control or punishment, but about guidance, love, and preparing her for a fulfilling life as the days turned into weeks. She noticed changes within herself as well. Confidence replaced fear, curiosity replaced caution, and joy replaced despair. She began to laugh freely, to speak openly, and to engage with the world around her with enthusiasm and wonder. The years of neglect had left their mark, but the love and care she received now were helping her to heal, to grow, and to thrive in ways she had never imagined. Her grandfather encouraged her to explore the world beyond the house. They went on trips, attended cultural events, and visited places she had only read about in books. Each experience broadened her perspective, showing her that life was vast and full of possibilities. She learned to navigate new situations, make decisions, and embrace challenges with courage and confidence. These experiences became milestones, marking her transformation from a girl who had lived in isolation to a young person, ready to embrace the world. She also learned the importance of giving back. Her grandfather involved her in charitable work, showing her that she could use her experiences to help others. She visited shelters, participated in community projects, and shared her story with those who needed hope. This not only helped others but also strengthened her sense of purpose and resilience, reinforcing that her hardships had shaped her into someone capable of compassion and action as the months passed. The contrast between her former life in the garage and her current life became more pronounced. She no longer feared the night, no longer hid from adults, and no longer felt invisible. She had a home, a family, education, and opportunities. The garage had been her world for so long, but now it was a distant memory. A chapter of her life that had shaped her but would no longer define her. Her relationship with her grandfather deepened. They shared meals, stories, and quiet moments, building a bond filled with trust, love, and mutual respect. He guided her with patience, always encouraging her to explore, question, and grow. She felt safe in his presence, confident that he would always protect her and support her. For the first time, she truly understood what it meant to be loved unconditionally. Through all these experiences, she discovered her own strength. She realized that surviving the garage had taught her resilience, patience, and empathy. She had endured years of neglect and cruelty, yet she had emerged capable, intelligent, and full of hope. The love and support she now received allowed her to channel these qualities into growth, creativity, and meaningful connections. In time, she began to plan for her future. She thought about her dreams, her goals, and the person she wanted to become. Education, creativity, and helping others were central to her vision. She embraced her potential, knowing that her past hardships had given her unique insights, empathy, and determination. Each day became an opportunity to shape her life in ways she had only imagined while sitting in the garage. Her journey from the garage to her grandfather's home was a transformation not just of environment, but of the soul. She learned that love, care, and opportunity could heal even the deepest wounds. She discovered that the world, though sometimes cruel, could also be kind, generous, and full of possibility, and she embraced it all with courage, gratitude, and a heart wide open to the life she had long dreamed of living. Life had changed completely for her, yet every morning still began with a quiet reflection of the journey she had taken. She had gone from a cold, dark garage to a warm, bright home filled with love and care. The memories of fear, neglect, and loneliness remained, but they were no longer chains holding her down. Instead, they became reminders of the strength she had found within herself, the resilience that had carried her through years of hardship. She would wake up in her comfortable room, look around at the sunlight streaming through the windows, and feel a sense of gratitude and awe. The world, once distant and unreachable, was now hers to explore. And she intended to embrace every opportunity it offered. Her grandfather remained a steady presence in her life, providing guidance, encouragement, and unconditional love. He celebrated her achievements, comforted her fears, and listened patiently to her dreams. Their bond grew stronger with each passing day, and she began to see him not just as a guardian, but as a true friend and mentor. She marveled at how his patience and understanding had helped her rebuild her confidence and trust in people. She realized that the love and care she had received were teaching her not only to heal, but also to embrace life fully. Education became a central focus, and she threw herself into learning with a passion that had been dormant during her years in the garage. She explored subjects she had never known, discovering talents and interests that had remained hidden under years of neglect. She found joy in reading, writing, and exploring new ideas, and her teachers were amazed at her dedication and curiosity. Each day at school became an adventure, filled with learning, laughter, and the excitement of possibilities she had never imagined. She thrived academically, but more importantly, she thrived emotionally, developing a sense of self-worth and confidence that had been absent for so long. Her social life began to flourish as well. She made friends who appreciated her kindness, intelligence, and creativity. She learned to navigate relationships with trust and openness, embracing the joy of connection after years of isolation. She laughed more freely, spoke more confidently, and engaged with others without fear or hesitation. The experiences of the past had taught her empathy and compassion, making her a loyal and understanding friend. She valued these new relationships deeply, recognizing that human connection was one of the most precious gifts of her transformed life. At home, she explored new hobbies and interests that had been denied to her for so long. She painted, played music, wrote stories, and even tried gardening. Each activity brought a sense of fulfillment and joy, allowing her to express herself in ways she had never experienced. Her grandfather encouraged these pursuits, providing the resources, space, and support she needed. Through creativity, she found a voice that had been silenced for years, and she discovered that her imagination was a powerful tool for growth and healing. The pets she had rescued and cared for in the garage remained by her side, thriving in the new environment. She nurtured them with love and patience, and in return, they offered unwavering companionship and comfort. The bond she shared with them became a source of strength, reminding her of the importance of care, responsibility, and the joy of giving and receiving love. They had been her only friends in the garage, and now they were symbols of the life she had rebuilt, full of stability and happiness. As she grew older, she began to explore the wider world, traveling with her grandfather and experiencing places she had only read about in books. Each journey opened her eyes to new cultures, ideas, and perspectives, broadening her understanding of the world and her place within it. She embraced these experiences eagerly, learning to navigate challenges, make decisions, appreciate the beauty and diversity of life. Her confidence grew with each adventure, and she began to see herself as capable, resilient, and deserving of happiness. Her grandfather also taught her the importance of giving back. Together, they visited shelters, supported charitable organizations, and shared her story with others in need of hope. She discovered that her own experiences of hardship had given her a unique perspective, one that allowed her to empathize with and support others. She found fulfillment in helping those who were struggling, knowing that her journey could inspire and guide them. This sense of purpose became a central part of her life, providing meaning and satisfaction beyond personal happiness. As time passed, she reflected on the contrast between her past and present. The garage, once a place of suffering and fear, had been a testing ground for her resilience. Her new home, filled with love, opportunity, and growth, was a testament to the power of care, guidance, and human connection. She realized that her past had shaped her, but it no longer defined her. She had emerged stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. Ready to embrace the future with courage and optimism, her relationships with family members deepened as well. She learned to appreciate the support and love of those who had always cared for her. Recognizing that trust and communication were essential in building meaningful connections, she forgave past neglect, not to forget, but to release the weight of anger and resentment. This forgiveness allowed her to fully engage with her present life, focusing on growth, love, and the pursuit of happiness. She also began to consider her future in practical ways. Education, career aspirations, and personal growth became central goals. She explored different paths, discovering passions that aligned with her strengths and values. She set realistic goals and worked diligently toward them, using the discipline and resilience developed in her earlier years to drive her progress. Each achievement, no matter how small, reinforced her belief in her capabilities and the power of determination. Her personal growth extended to emotional intelligence as well. She learned to manage her emotions, communicate effectively, and navigate challenges with maturity and grace. The hardships she had endured had given her insight into human behavior and empathy, making her both self-aware and compassionate. She used these skills to build healthy relationships, resolve conflicts, support others in meaningful ways. Through all of this, her grandfather remained a guiding presence. He celebrated her successes, comforted her during setbacks, and encouraged her to take risks and embrace new experiences. Their bond grew stronger with each passing year, grounded in mutual respect, love, and understanding. She knew that she could always rely on him, that his support was unwavering, and that together they had created a life far richer and more fulfilling than she had ever imagined. Her past experiences also inspired her to advocate for others who were in situations similar to the one she had endured. She spoke at schools, community centers, and charitable events, sharing her story to raise awareness and inspire hope. Her message was one of resilience, courage, and the transformative power of love and care. She became a role model for young people, demonstrating that even in the face of neglect and hardship, It was possible to overcome adversity and build a meaningful life as she matured. She continued to balance her personal growth with her desire to help others. She pursued higher education, developed skills in areas that interested her, and continued her creative endeavors. Her life became a blend of learning, exploration, giving, and self-discovery. She found joy in each day, knowing that she had the ability to shape her destiny, and that her past, while a part of her, no longer limited her possibilities. Friendships, family relationships, and community connections became central to her life. She surrounded herself with people who supported her, encouraged her, and shared her values. These relationships provided stability, happiness, and a sense of belonging that she had never experienced in the garage. She valued these connections deeply. Understanding that human bonds were essential for a fulfilling life, her health and well-being improved significantly. She ate nutritious meals, exercised, and slept in a safe, comfortable environment. She took care of her mental health, practicing mindfulness, reflection, and self-care. The years of neglect had left scars, but through care, love, and attention, she was able to heal physically and emotionally. She grew stronger, more energetic, and more confident, ready to face challenges and embrace opportunities with determination. She never forgot her pets, who remained loyal companions throughout her journey. She cared for them with the same love and dedication she had shown in the garage, now able to provide them with a life full of comfort, play, and security. Their presence continued to bring joy, companionship, and a sense of purpose to her daily life. As she looked back on her journey, she realized that the hardships she had endured had shaped her into the person she had become. They had taught her resilience, empathy, and determination. They had fueled her creativity, strengthened her relationships, and inspired her to help others. Her grandfather's unwavering support had been transformative, showing her the power of love, guidance, and belief in one's potential. She understood that her past, while painful, had been a catalyst for growth, and that her present and future were filled with promise and possibility. Ultimately, she embraced her life fully, appreciating the journey that had brought her from the garage to a home filled with love, opportunity, and hope. She celebrated each moment, each achievement, and each connection, knowing that she had the strength, wisdom, and courage to shape her destiny. Her story became a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, the transformative power of care and love, and the enduring hope that even in the darkest circumstances, a brighter future is always possible.